Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so I want to talk about Stephen Colbert, head of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS. This is a flagship program for them. The Late Show has been around forever. Stephen Colbert is the most recent host of it, has been for several years at this point. I think all through the first Trump era, Stephen Colbert was on TV. He came there from Comedy Central. I think his last gig before The Late Show was The Colbert Report on Comedy Central, where he played a sort of caricature of a right-wing pundit. And that was my favorite iteration of Stephen Colbert. I guess it was a certain era. Who knows if that character would even work well in today's climate? I think it would. I was always a little disappointed that Colbert went to such an edgeless platform, because I thought his commentary had such an edge to it, and his CBS gig showed the more, good Christian boy side of him, which I think was nice. I mean, it was nice to show that side of him to America, and to the extent that was like a backroom PR decision to lean on that so that he could get this job. It was well done, because he was a more edgy figure, and he's been pretty sanitized at this point, except every now and then he makes a comment on his program that gets him in a little trouble. I remember when he said that Donald Trump's mouth is like Vladimir Putin's cock holster that was probably 2017 that he said that. That got him in a lot of trouble. And so recently he has commented on this merger between Paramount and this other company called Skydance, I believe. There's a big merger, like $8 billion merger happening between those two companies. A lot of implications for the program that Stephen Colbert is on and other programs like 60 Minutes, especially because after Trump won the 2024 election, he took out a lawsuit against CBS as well as other media companies for various versions of what he views as unfair coverage. In the case of CBS, he is accusing them of editing an interview unfairly, and essentially that an answer that Kamala Harris gave about Netanyahu was confusing and not satisfying, and they gave a favorable clip of that interview as a soundbite to like one of their morning programs, and then the full interview aired later. So the interview and her question, which was supposedly not a very good answer to the question, it aired in full on the actual program, but they distributed maybe a little bit tighter of a clip earlier in the day. So that is essentially what Trump is alleging is like, I don't know, election interference or unfair treatment. I'm not sure exactly like legally what standard they have to uphold or what his basis is there. I think from what I've seen, there's virtually no basis to that particular lawsuit. Other lawsuits that he's taken out against the media actually have more merit, but that is one of the ones that doesn't. And they found some court in Texas, some particular court that was likely to, look favorably at this accusation, and they filed the lawsuit there. So that's really the only reason that there's any momentum to this case at all. And probably the whole thing was to extract a settlement, because this merger that Paramount wants to do with Skydance has to go through the Trump administration. So he, now that he's the president, is essentially able to hold that $8 billion merger over their head. And so there's a lot of pretty on the nose speculation that they are appeasing the Trump administration, not only because he's suing them, but because they want this merger to go through, and that the lawsuit was really just a way of exacting that leverage over them more so than it was just in itself supposed to be something that they couldn't defend themselves against, which they could. But in this case, they're choosing to settle. So Stephen Colbert has called this a big fat bribe. He did a whole segment on his show about it, actually, on Monday, talking about how it's a bribe and how they're appeasing the Trump administration. Spent a decent amount of time on it. And then within the last day, it has been announced that they are ending The Late Show. So not only is Stephen Colbert being fired by the network and by the parent company, the whole show is ceasing to exist. They are canceling the show. This is one of these long-running late-night franchises. You know, they always replace it with somebody else. Even The Daily Show tried to keep going without Jon Stewart. And then ultimately, he seems to be the best one in the driver's seat of that vehicle. But we'll get back to Jon Stewart later. Point being that they made a very, very bold decision to cancel the show. And I think that says a lot. And Colbert, in his announcement on the program, said that he just learned about this, that they just told him about it like that day. And then he told his audience about it. And that's it. So this is not happening right away. It's happening next May. So this year is going to be the last running year of the show. Supposedly, I guess there's time for this decision to be reversed. Who knows if this is some kind of way to try to threaten Stephen Colbert, but it doesn't seem like that. I mean, it seems like if you're trying to threaten somebody's job, you threaten their job, but when a company announces that your position has been entirely eliminated, in my experience, that they don't tend to want to go back on a decision like that. But it doesn't mean they won't. And this is the Trump era, and crazier things have happened, especially in relation to Trump and the kinds of pressures that he exerts. So, Stephen Colbert, it's looking like, as a combination of the fact that Trump has never liked him and that Stephen Colbert has been very critical of Trump, and the fact that Stephen Colbert is directly critical of the network, it seems like they are taking him off the air for that, and they're trying to make an example of him. And I think that the network, in ending the show entirely, to me, that is sending some kind of message, right? Because this, I mean, first of all, the Colbert Report is like a top-rated show. This is a popular show we're talking about. This is not like a drag on the network. It's one of their foremost projects, not to mention the fact that this is a long-running vehicle. So to end the show, to me, seems to be trying to send a message somewhere to someone. And it seems like in the context of the lawsuit and wanting to get this merger through, it seems like the message is that they are willing to aggressively comply with Trump. And there has been speculation over the past few weeks, before this news came out, that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert both might be at risk of losing their jobs because they're actually both under the same parent company, which is Paramount, that owns CBS and Comedy Central. So there's been speculation that both of them might lose their jobs because Donald Trump specifically wanted that in discussions related to this merger. In other words, if they want their $8 billion merger, they got to get rid of these two guys who go out and criticize Trump every day. So this is Trump's way of going after the media. All of it is perfectly in line with the type of behavior that comes from Trump, including the erraticness. So who knows what the result of all this is going to be. But it seems like after Trump's second win, a lot of the media companies decided, we're not going to fight this guy anymore. We know how he operates. We know how he exerts pressure, and he likes bribes, and he likes to extract bribes, and he likes to extort. So we are just going to be friendly to him. Another thing I noticed is that Chris DiStefano hosted for Jimmy Kimmel recently. He sat in for Jimmy Kimmel. And I haven't looked into that too much, like who the parent companies are there, and I'm sure that they're just like friends as comedians or whatever. But I thought that was an interesting choice because Jimmy Kimmel is a pretty pointedly liberal figure, and Chris DiStefano is not. I don't think he's very outwardly political, but from what I have heard from him, I think he's at least deferential to Donald Trump and like the current presidential administration. I don't think he's critical of it. I believe he leans to the right, as many of this new crop of comics do. So if Trump is trying to do this sweeping move to get people like Colbert and Jon Stewart out of mainstream media because the media seems to be acquiescing and maybe even seems to be wanting to make itself more comfortable within this sort of growing conservative environment. So we'll see what happens. Jon Stewart's position is different anyway. He came back to Comedy Central. I believe he only hosts sometimes. It's still a rotating cast with people like Jordan Klepper, who also fill in. So who knows what they'll do. This seems like a sudden decision on the part of Stephen Colbert, but also seems like it was kind of bubbling. And if these reports that this was something that Trump wanted have anything to them, then I think it's very possible that we'll see Jon Stewart get the same treatment. Now, look, both of these guys are probably going to be fine. And to speak specifically of Stephen Colbert, because nothing has happened to Jon Stewart yet, maybe this is best for him because he's still a young guy. And I would honestly like to see him have a different job from The Late Show. I'm sure from his perspective, that's not what he wanted. Obviously, he took that job. That's part of it. It's kind of like a lifer type of position, you know, unless something crazy happens, which is what's happening now. So, you know, I think Stephen Colbert will probably be better in a different type of role. I'd like to see him in something where he can speak his mind a little more freely, where he can have a little bit more edge to him. I think that is the element of his personality that leads him to making genuinely incisive commentary from time to time, even though I think sometimes he gets it wrong, like his treatment of Mamdani when he had him and Brad Lander on the program recently was whack, you know, so that I think betrays his personal media bias in a way that has always been relatively clear with Stewart and Colbert. But I think Stewart has been the one who's been a little bit more freely outspoken and kind of capturing the sentiment of the moment a little better recently. And hopefully this is an opportunity for Stephen Colbert to do the same thing, because I think he has the talent and the ability to do that. I definitely think he's smart enough to do that. I just think that he is somewhat constrained by that environment, and you know, hopefully this lights a fire under him, because not only is he losing a good job, but he's being forced out of it by a tyrant. And so that's exactly the kind of thing that comedians should use as an opportunity to, you know, become one of the real lightning rods of the moment. And that's, you know, it's a funny inverse with all these right-wing comedians running around talking about how they're being canceled and censored. None of them, not a single right-wing commentator or comedian or anybody has ever been fired from a position under these type of conditions. Certainly not in the last 20 years in a prominent way. Nobody has ever been punished for their conservative opinions in the way that Stephen Colbert is being punished for speaking truth to power, just speaking up about the fact that this merger with his parent company, it reeks. And, you know, that's the kind of speech that we should be protecting, particularly from the government. This is not just CBS, oh, he's just fired. Okay, he said something that the company doesn't like. No, this is directly tied to pressure from the administration. You'd have to be an idiot not to see that. Obviously, they have plausible deniability because they're always going to give themselves that. But clearly, this is part of some kind of tacit agreement between Trump and Paramount. And we will know that with even more certainty if they fire Jon Stewart as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. And I really think that it's a reflection of where the media could be going in its coverage in general. I mean, we've all sort of seen that a lot of them seem to be doing a right-wing pivot on the very high levels, so that even if some of the coverage or the programming is more liberal still, you see these machinations turning that are pushing things in a direction that is like against criticism of the administration, against criticism of Israel. You see Joy Ann Reid losing her show at MSNBC because she spoke up about Israel. Even what happened to Don Lemon, although that was a bit more farcical and that was years ago. But at the same time, that was because of, he was being more critical of Vivek Ramaswamy on CNN than the leadership wanted him to be. And obviously that wasn't the only thing going on. I'm not defending Don Lemon that much because I don't like him that much. But really, he lost his position because the CEO, that one guy who totally spiraled out, wanted them to be welcoming and open to Vivek Ramaswamy. This was early on in his run for president. And when Don Lemon was openly combative with him on the program, that was pretty much what ended up getting him fired. So these media companies are clamping down, and all they're doing is chasing Stephen Colbert and certainly Jon Stewart to some other platform is going to grab them, and they're going to have more of an audience because of this. However, there does seem still to be some value to, like, you know, being on the mainstream airwaves. Certainly that's the way to get Trump's attention. And that is why I think he views people like Colbert and Stewart as like a threat to him, even though in the grand scheme, I don't know if those are the most relevant figures. But something like this certainly could make them that. And I'm also noticing with this Epstein story that the Wall Street Journal dropped. They dropped they made a big deal about this story about Epstein. It's a big bombshell. And then what it is it's a note that Donald Trump supposedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003, talking about, it was like for his birthday, some weird thing, talking about how, oh, there's secrets between us, and like something weird and poetic. And they keep talking about how he wrote this into the figure of a woman or something. Just weird. I'm not saying the letter doesn't exist. I'm not saying he didn't write it. He probably fucking did. It's the weirdest reporting I've ever seen. I don't know why you would even put this in the news. It's garbage. And I only say that because this is a moment where the Trump base is ready to hear something. They're ready to hear something concrete about Trump and Epstein. And this is not gonna fucking do it. And, you know, I'm not saying that like magically overnight they're going to trust the mainstream media, although this is the Wall Street Journal, so it's a little bit more, you know, it's not like the liberal media. But right now, a lot of people are having sort of a fissure break open in their mind, where they're asking themselves, has Trump been lying to me this whole time? They might not be willing to admit it. They might not ever fully come to the conclusion that they made a mistake. However, Trump doing this whole weird dance with the Epstein files and deciding not to release them and pretty clearly covering it up, that has caused a lot of people to rethink Donald Trump himself, specifically in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not making any claims about what that's going to mean electorally, but that is objectively true. People are criticizing and thinking differently about Trump in a way that I've never seen before from his base. And this is the moment that if you drop something undeniable, even his base will consume it and it will stick. But if you drop shit like this note, they didn't even produce the note. They don't even show you it. They're just describing a body picture of a woman. This is not gonna do it. And this is the type of shit that caused people to write the media off on actual, and now Trump is running the same exact playbook that he ran about Russia, saying, oh, they made this up. This is the Democrats. This is Obama. This is, I don't know, Bill Clinton. They all made it up to hurt me. And he's running with that. And it's going to work again because the media is going to keep trying to drip feed little shit like this. It would be better not to publish anything and just let the discourse do its thing. But if you're going to publish something real. And I know they have it. I know there's people out there who want to do real reporting on this and they're being stopped. Because these are, you know, rings of powerful people that affect everybody far and wide, and that's why there's such a hush about this. But also because of the new environment that Trump is trying to create, and I think a lot of networks like CBS view this as an opportunity to show Trump that they're not going to throw him under the bus. And now Trump has directed Pam Bondi to release grand jury testimony in the Epstein case. So we don't know what that means that he's going to release. We don't know what's going to be released. We don't know what's going to be in it. It could be incredibly interesting stuff. It could be incredibly boring stuff. Probably going to be a little bit of a mixture of both. We don't know if they're going to, you know, selectively remove some stuff. And also this has to go through a judge first. So this is an appeasing announcement. He's making this announcement to calm everybody down. Everybody relax. I'm going to release the files. But really, this is going to go through some court, and they're going to basically hope that the news cycle turns over by that time. So let's not allow it to do that, and let's keep coming back to this, because this is essentially going to be the thread that I think leads to Donald Trump's greatest weakness. Even if you just take the information that's already on the table, I think this is the best thing to undermine his credibility with his own base. And so the media needs to like be smart about choosing that moment. And whoever decides to do honest, accurate, and significant reporting on this is gonna win and make history, and the rest of these companies are just going to cower. Like this video, please like and subscribe, and if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm also running a live stream now of my own music and content 24/7, so go check that out if you're interested in the music. You can drop a comment in the chat, tell me what you think of the music or ask me a question. I'm going to be kind of checking in on the chat there regularly, just to talk to you guys if you have any questions for me or want to suggest things, and then if you send super chats in there too, I can read those on the pod. Just some new things that I'm trying out. I also got my website up with a little bit of merch on there, just a hoodie and a hat for now. I'm selling those at retail price just to try to get some stuff out there. So if any of that is your cup of tea, check it out and become a member if you want access to exclusive music and different kinds of content before anybody else gets it.